All right, all right. All right, guys. Thank you for again for tuning into another video. Y'all know we've been reading Project 2025. So we're about to do part two because it was kind of long. It was really long. I think we got about 10 pages left. So we're gonna try to get through that, right? But yeah, this is the second part of the executive office of the President of the United States, and we're about to get into that. So, for those who have not yet, go ahead and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's going across the bottom. Actually, right now, as we speak, in the court of public opinion, you have to put in the court of public opinion 5999. If you don't put that up, the channel might not pop you up because it is a smaller channel. We're trying to grow and get to 100 subscribers. So yeah, make sure you go doing that. Make sure you're liking the video. Please share this information out. There are so many people out here who do not know what Project 2025 even holds because they refuse to read it. That's fine. Hopefully they're willing to listen to it, and hopefully they can actually understand what's going on. And I'm not a person sitting here with a law degree or anything like that. I'm just a regular person just like you. And we're breaking this thing down, and at least we can say that we went through it and tried to decipher, what it is that they're trying to do. I know a lot of people have heard about Project 2025 and some of the things that are in it. And we're definitely going to be getting over into the good parts. But right now, we're still in the first 100 pages, and we got like 800 more pages to go. So there's that. 800 plus actually to go. So we're going to get through it. As you can see, we're a little bit less than 100 days before we get over to the polls to go vote in November. We should have it finished by then, right? So let's go ahead and get into it. And that way we can mosey along. Let me see. Let me share my screen here. All right, let me get this PDF pulled up. Okay, so we left off here with the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, the USTR. Okay, it says the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative provides the President with the internal White House resources necessary to formulate and execute a unified whole of government approach to trade policy. The president should ensure that the USTR is empowered to serve in that leadership role. Much other EOP components organize and drive a coordinated policy agenda on behalf of the president. The People's Republic of China's predatory trade practices have disrupted the open market trading systems that have provided mutual benefit for all participating countries, including China, for decades. The failure of the World Trade Organization, or WTO, is discipline for China for abrogation of its trading commitments has seriously undermined its incredible credibility and made it made it a largely ineffective situation. The United States, through an empowered USTR, must act to rebalance and refocus international trading relationships in favor of democratic nations that embrace free, fair, and open trade principles built on market driven economies. Chapter 26 of this book outlines recommended trade policies for the incoming president. However, regardless of the approach, successful implementation of the trade agenda will require the president to articulate a clear policy direction and instructions for the executive branch to operate in a coordinated fashion under the leadership of an empowered USTR. To address these and other challenges, protect the American worker, and secure free and open markets for our communities and businesses, the next president must leverage the institutional resources and strength of the USTR and neither allow institutions' interests to drive fragmented trade policy that is developed from the ground up, nor cater to parochial interests across government and Washington's broker industry of influence. The USTR's mission is vitally important in reorienting the global trade system in the direction that is open, fair, and prosperous. In order to achieve the president's policy goals, a strong USTR must be empowered to set trade policy from the White House with the authority and resources to represent the interests of the president trade agenda with adequate budget, staff, analysis, and expertise to engage meaningfully in internal and interagency policy deliberations. The USTR should organize and harness existing interagency trade committees to serve the president's trade agenda and drive a consensus among federal stakeholders. Dispose of legacy the- dispose of a legacy advisory committees with members who serve special interests, direct action to progress toward implementing the president's agenda, and hold agencies and officials accountable for delivering the president's agenda. The USTR's leadership should not only coordinate and enforce the president's agenda across, but also set and enforce the president's trade agenda internally. Trade policy and priorities should be set by the president and implemented by the U.S. Trade Representative in coordination with the other economic and national security officials, not by the range of government and non governmental interests that attempt to force their policy preferences on the USTR. A USTR empowered with the necessary resources, authorities, and interagency cooperation will protect U.S. interests in the global market more effectively. Okay. So they're saying whatever from what I gathered from that is whatever the president says is what, as far as his agenda on what he feels like what should be happening with the open trade market is basically they're going to try to do, and that's the reason why they're trying to take so many people out of positions, certain positions, and put and replace them with other people, and it's because they're going to try to implement whatever it is that the president, which in this case it would be President Trump or former President Trump, they were going to try to implement whatever he passes, no matter how heinous it is. Um, of course, there are people that are going to be there to advise him, but it doesn't really sound like they're going to listen to him or he's going to listen to them. And from what I've been seeing actually online of some of the people from the former Trump administration, they say that that's actually pretty common for him. Which they they try to advise him, and he pretty much just does his own thing. So let's go to the next section. It's the Council of Economic Advisors, which is the CEA. Congress established the Council of Economic Advisors in 1946 to advise the president of economic policy based on data, research, and evidence. That's funny within itself because they never come with any of that. But okay, let's go. The CEA is one of the oldest congressionally created offices within the White House complex and plays a broad role in bringing economic expertise to administration policy across. The CEA has one presidentially appointed and Senate confirmed chair, presidentially appointed members who assist and often have expertise that complements the chair, approximately 40 staff employees. Okay, so the president gets to appoint all these people. So he gets to put whoever he wants in these places. Statutorily, the CEA is charged with being the president's principal source of economic advice. Okay, so there's his advisors. However, this role has diminished over time as its policy appraisal and especially formulation and recommendation functions have been taken over or diluted by other economic policy bodies within the White House. By law, the CEA is required to publish an annual economic report of the president within 10 days after submission of the budget. This report is not just a messaging document, it is an important it is an opportunity to provide greater rigor in support of policy area with the White House is that the White House is prioritizing and to build up the external credibility of those ideas. A future conservative administration should utilize the CEA as the senior internal White House uh, economist, must much as the White House's counsel much as the White House counsel's office functions as the senior internal White House lawyers. That does not mean that there are no economists in the other offices. There are just as there often are lawyers in the policy councils, and other White House offices. But the CEA's role, like the White House councils, is to employ its unique expertise, particularly in the technical side, on the technical side, to ensure that sound analysis is contributing to and shaping the policy discussion. Okay. In practice, this means that CEA staff do not coordinate the policy process in the way that the DPC or NEC would, but they should be integral in the EOP's policy development process. So they don't get as much power, right? They don't get as much power as, say, the DPC or the NEC. However, whatever agenda is being proposed, they're basically supposed to support that. EA should support and sound policy development and execution by actively contributing or running policy dialogues, proactive issues that need to be addressed, consulting questions that arise, and guiding EOP officials on the analytical foundations of policy. Structurally, the White House chief should ensure that the CEA has a seat at the policy making table on all relevant policy. Senior economists traditionally have not gone through the Office of Presidential process, and more often than not are hired on an academic year cycle. As a result, the senior economists hired in the summer of the presidential election year tend to remain on staff until the next summer of even if a president from the opposite takes power and installs a new slate of CEA political appointees for chair, members, etc. Although these hiring practices sometimes, I really hate when that happens. Put that on silent. I'm so sorry. Let me put my phone on. Okay, where are we? Senior economists traditionally have gone through the Office of Presidential Personnel processes, and more often than not are hired on an academic year. Okay. As a result, senior economists hired in the summer of the presidential election year tend to remain on staff until the next summer, even if a president from the opposite party takes power and installs a new slate of CEA political appointees for chairs, members, etc. Although these hiring practices create some although these hiring practices create some continuity, the presence of senior economists who were never fully vetted for their alignment with the White House policy objectives, or who were holdovers from a recently departed administration, can breed skepticism and distrust of the CEA by other units within the White House, creating the risk that the CEA's role in the policymaking process will be diminished. A future administration should consider hiring that reflects the White House calendar mid-January, Office of the Presidential Personnel. So it would seem as if the way that the president comes to office versus the way that the CEA comes into office is like it bounces back and forth. So, like we put a president in this year, the CEA appointed of CEA will probably come in like the next year or maybe even 2 years after that. But nonetheless, after the president gets there, so a new president will come into office, and you'll still have CEA members from the old administration that's there. And then, from the sounds of it, it seems like they want to change that around to where instead of them in the summertime, after the new president has already been put in place, they want to change that to a January calendar so that around January 20th, when the new president comes in place, a new CEA panel or board comes into play. All right. The National Space Council is responsible for providing advice and recommendations to the president on the formulation and implementation of space policy and strategy. Okay. It is charged of government approach to the nation's space interests, civil, military, intelligence, commercial, or diplomatic. Historically, it has been chaired by the vice president and the president's at the president's direction, and its members consist of members of the cabinet and other senior executive branch officials, as specified by the president in Executive Order 13803. SPC's purpose is to ensure that the president's priorities relative to space are carried out and as necessary to resolve policy conflicts among departments and agencies that are related to space. Now, this actually raises questions in my book because, first of all, we don't even know if Trump believes in space. Um, for all I know, he believes that the world is flat. But with that being said, I understand that him and Elon Musk, who likes to go to space pretty frequently, um, be something that Musk would be interested in because, like I said, he likes to do the whole space travel, colonize Mars, and all this and that. So I wonder if that is a reason as to why he was initially going to back him with the $45 million endorsement um, for consecutively for a couple months. I wonder, was he trying to be a part of the NSPC? So space projects and programs are risky, complex, expensive, see, and time consuming. Although commercial space innovations are lowering costs and accelerated schedules. Nevertheless, while fiscal disciplines should not be ignored, long term stability is crucial to investors, hello, innovators, industries, and all I heard that is crucial to Elon Musk's. Policy stability is easier than policies when policies and programs are aligned with long term national interests as opposed to those of particular advocacy factions. The Trump administration's major space policies, including the U.S. Space Force, the Artemis program to land the next Americans on the moon, and support for the strong commercial space sector, have endured under the Biden administration. Believes in space, or at least people in his administration do. Now, I just want to know, because that raises another question. What is so important about the moon that you would try to attempt to put more Americans on it? I think that's a question that we should be asking. Major challenges remain on implementation and regulatory reform to keep evolving space markets and competitors. These include the ability of space activities in light of increasing orbital debris, creation of space situational awareness services for civil and commercial uses, management of commercial remote sensing capabilities, keeping up with licensing demands due to high launch rates, transitioning international space station operations to multiple privately owned space platforms. Hello, I still hear Elon Musk. And most importantly, accelerating the acquisition and fielding of national security space capabilities in response to an increasingly aggressive. I got to say this. China lives rent free in these people's heads. The vice president should have a clear understanding with the National Security Advisor and the White House counsel that they and their respective staffs will work within the White House to determine the scope and leadership of policy reviews that can overlap multiple areas of responsibility. A similar understanding is necessary with the head of other policy councils, such as the NEC, DPC, and National Science and Technology Council, or NSTC. As a result of the president's direction and the vice president's leadership, the NSPC under the Trump administration will be able to coordinate a wide range of space policy reviews, legislative proposals, and regulatory reforms smoothly. The NSPC generally led on space issues within the EOP, but other White House offices also took on space topics. So this would be something that JD Vance, if they were to be in office, would be in control of. Again, don't know if he's a part of the administration that actually believes in or actually believes in space, considering some of the topic, some of the comments that he's made. I'm not so sure about that. That'd be pretty much scary because I definitely see Elon Musk being a major contributor to the NSPC, because he's the one that's always going, like I said, he's the one that's trying to colonize. We don't know what the infatuation with the moon is, but maybe they're trying to colonize that too. He has a bunch of money because he does own a large corporations, and so he does have a lot of money. So yeah, I just see Elon Musk written all over that. As a member of the NSPC and in coordination with other members, the Office of Science and Technological Policy developed a national space weather strategy, researching and development (R&D), plan to mitigate the effects of orbital debris, and protocols for planetary protection to avoid biological contamination to your bodies. Aliens? Okay. The Council of Economic Advisors did research on the economic benefit of space property rights. Oh, they finna start selling property in space, y'all. Y'all gonna have space real estate. OMB's Office of Information and Regulatory Reform updated and streamlined commercial launch licensing and commercial remote sensing satellite rules. Well, we're already being monitored by satellite. I just imagine it's just gonna get worse if these people get in office. During the Trump administration, if a topic was purely military, such as standing up the U.S. Space Command, the NSC took the lead. If a topic cut military, civil, and commercial sectors, as was with the case of cybersecurity in space, the NSPC and NSC would co-chair the policy review groups. Okay. Trusted collegial relationships across the White House complex are critical to implementation and oversight. Nowhere is this more important than in the relationship between the NSPC staff and OMB staff, who oversee civil and national security related space spending. NSPC and OMB staff can communicate clear presidential priorities to governments and agencies, facilitating smooth development of the president's budget request. Elon Musk. And maybe Tim Mellon, because he came out the woodwork with his large donation. The NSPC and OMB have many opportunities to collaborate in promoting presidential priorities while finding offsets in lower priority programs and funding lines. He's going to take as much money as he can from that space budget, and he's going to put that, uh, or because it can directly deal with the military and also indirectly deal with the military. So he might actually beef it up. But it still says Elon Musk. And I'm going to say Tim Mellon too, because Tim Mellon is that wanted and paid $1 million to do so, to go in the ocean to find Amelia Earhart um, plane wreckage. And he claimed a lot of things that the other guys see. But he put $1 million behind it, and then he basically got kicked off. He got kicked off the trip, and then he drug him in court for a couple years to probably basically get his money back, the million that he got, because he felt like he was since because he just was getting weird. He was getting weird, and he was saying that he saw Amelia Earhart's head and the head of her uh, co-pilot in cellophane bags, still hooked, attached to their air tanks or airlines. He was saying that he saw old toilet paper, and some other stuff that he was saying. And this wreck happened clearly at least 75 years ago. But yeah, he got kicked off the trip. All right, next, Office of Science and Technology Policy, OSTP. The White House Office of Science and Technology Policy was created by the National Policy Organization and Priorities Act of 1976. Before its creation, presidents received counsel on such matters through advisors and boards that had no statutory authority. The director of the OSTP is one of the few Senate confirmed positions within the office of the president. Consistent else, the president may delegate to the director of OSTP directive authority over other elements of the executive branch. Other EOP policy officials and organizations such as the NSC and NEC are formally only advisory with relevant agency by the president. The OSTP functions, as contained in law, are to advise the president of technological considerations, evaluate the effectiveness of the federal effort, and generally lead and coordinate the federal government's R&D programs. Is being manipulated at the agencies to support separate political and institutional agendas. The president should increase the prominence of the OSTP's institutional agendas. I'm sorry, director. Let me read that again. The president should increase the prominence of the OSTP's director, either formally or informally. Okay, it could be a phone call. Discussions and subsequent outcomes and theoretically help balance out agencies like the Departments of Energy, State and Commerce, and Environmental Protection Agency, and Council on Environmental Quality. The OSTP can matters matters in support of OMB. The OSTP should continue to play a lead role in coordinating federal R&D programs. Recent legislation and Science Act has expanded federal policy and funding across the enterprise, and therefore is a need for more significant leadership in both this area, both to ensure effectiveness and to avoid duplication of effort. As location in the White House, the OSTP must be concerned with advancing national interests and not merely the parochial concerns of department agencies or parts of the scientific community. During the Trump and Biden administrations, there have been a bipartisan so-called industries of the future, IOTF. Under President Trump, IOTF priorities are artificial intelligence, AI, quantum informational science, QIS, and advanced communications slash 5G, advanced manufacturing, and biotechnology. Under President Biden, this list has been expanded to include advanced materials, robotics, battery technology, cybersecurity, green products, and clean technology, plant genetics and agriculture technologies, nanotechnology, and semiconductor and microelectronics technologies. These priorities should be evaluated and narrowed to ensure consistency with the next administration's priorities. Given a long list of priorities, coordinated efforts across agencies and measuring success are extremely challenging. The OSTP and the OMB are required to work together on an annual basis to prioritize the funding requests and whatever Congress adds on top of them. But there continues to be a concern about mission creep and funds expended on non-scientific R&D. The president should also issue an executive order to reshape the U.S. global change, assuming that there's no executive order in place. It's called the USGCRP and related climate change research programs. The USGCRP produces strategic plan and research. For example, the National Climate Assessment that reduce the scope of legally proper options in presidential making decisions and in agency rulemaking and agitation. adjudications. Also, since much environmental policy successful litigation defense in the ways that the career bureaucracy should not be permitted to control. The process for producing assessments should include diverse viewpoints. The OSTP and the OMB should jointly assess the independence of the contractors used to conduct much of this outsourced government research that serves on as the basis for policy making. The next U.S. or it says the next president should critically analyze and, if required, refuse to accept any USGCRP assessment prepared under the Biden administration. Okay, so you just gonna go in there and change it just because. Got it. The president should also related EOP research components to their purely informational and advisory roles. Consistent with the Global Change Research Act of 1990, USG CRP related EOP components should be confined to a more limited advisory role. These components should include, but not necessarily be limited to, the OSTP, the NSTC's Committee on Environment, the USGCRP's interagency groups, for example, the Carbon Cycle Interagency Working Group, and the Federal to separate the scientific risk assessment function with the risk management function, which is the exclusive domain of elected policymakers and the public. Finally, the next administration will face a significant challenge in unwinding policies and procedures that were used to advance radical gender, racial, and equity initiatives under the banner of science. Okay. So they're going to defund it all. Got it. Similarly, the Biden administration's climate fanaticism will need climate change. Got it. As with other federal departments and agencies, the Biden administration's leveraging of the federal government's resources to further the woke agenda should be reversed and scrubbed from all policy manuals, guidance documents, and restored as the OSTP's top priority. Okay. So they're just going to put together as far as anyone that is sharing that money that's supposed to go towards science. They want to take it all back, pretty much. Okay, Council of Environmental Equality or Quality, not equality, just quality. Council of Environmental Quality. The Council of Environmental Quality is the EOP component within the principal task of administering the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, by issuing regulations and interpretive documents, and by overseeing the processes of individual permitting agencies on NEPA regulations, including categorical exclusions. The CEQ also coordinates environmental policy across the federal government, instruct the CEQ to rewrite its regulations implementing NEPA along the lines of the historic 2020 effort in restoring its key previous, such as banning the use of cumulative impact analysis. This effort should incorporate new learning and more aggressive reform options that were not included in the 2020 reform package, with the overall goal of streamlining the process to build on the Supreme Court ruling of the CEQ's interpretation of NEPA is entitled to substantial difference. Judicial review of agency NEPA analysis and judicial remedies, as well as agency action. The Federal Permitting Improvement Steering Council, or FPISC, is of which the CEQ is a part, has been powered by Congress through significant new funding and amendments to FAST 41. The president should build on this foundation to further empower the FPISC by making its executive director an EOP appointee, with delegating presidential directive authority over executive branch permitting agencies. For instance, the implementation of the Executive Order 13807s of federal decision, but many ways that the system established by Executive Order 13807 can be improved. The new president should seek to issue a new executive order to create a unified process for major infrastructure projects that include giving project proponents more control of any regulatory clocks. The president should issue an executive order establishing a senior advisor of energy and environmental policy by officials across the EOP. For example, the policy staff of the NSC, NEC, DPC, CEQ, and OSTP, and abolishing the existing offices of the Domestic Climate Policy. Yeah, they said they don't care about the snow caps melting. They don't care. The senior advisor would report directly to the chief of staff. The role would be similar to the role of Brian Dees and John Podesta uh, had in the Obama White House. This is similar, but not the same. This energy/environment coordinator would help lead the fight for sound energy and environment policies, um, both domestically and Okay, right. You're gonna get everybody to follow along. Got it. The president should eliminate the interagency working group on the social cost of carbon. Oh my gosh. Which is co-chaired by the OSTP, OMB, and CEA, and by executive order should end the use of SCC analysis, the social cost of carbon. They don't want it. Finally, the president should work with Congress to establish a sweeping uh, modern, modernization modernization of the entire permitting system across all departments and agencies that is aimed to at reducing litigation risk and giving agencies the authority to establish pragmatic, uh-uh, programmatic, general and provisional permits. So they don't want they don't want any checks and balances. They just want to be able to do it. Just do it. Office of National Drug Control Policy. Oh, this should be a good one. Created Congress created the Office of National Drug Control Policy, ONDCP, through the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1988 to serve as a coordinative auxiliary for the president on all matters related to drug policy. Fentanyl crisis and reduce the number of overdoses and fatalities. This crisis results in deaths of more than 100,000 Americans in 2021. The next administration must reaffirm a commitment to prevent drug overuse or drug use before it starts, providing treatment that leads to long-term recovery and reducing the availability of illicit drugs in the United States. The drug trafficking environment is exponentially more dynamic and dangerous today than it was just 5 years ago, as powerful synthetic opioids, fentanyl, and its analogs, are mixed into other drugs of abuse. Drug trafficking organizations are government actions and changes in use orders and into our communities is a paramount importance. For these reasons, the director of UNDCP should make it a point to consult with federal border enforcement officials. If you're trying to close the border, then what's the point? You know what? Keep going. The National Drug Control Program agencies represent a total of 41 billion in fiscal year 2022, whereas the position for overseeing budget activities is traditionally imperative that the political appointee led on making activities with conservative administrators concerned that the White House lacks the expertise to oversee such programs directly. The ONDCP and administers two grant programs: the Drug Free Community Support Program and the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas Program. While it makes sense to transfer these programs eventually to the Department of Justice and Department of Health and Human Services, respectively, it is vital that the ONDCP director ensure in the immediate term that that these grant programs are funding the president's drug control priorities and not woke nonprofits with leftist policy agendas. What do y'all think this means for the people who legally take fentanyl to people, or not just fentanyl, even the opioid drugs, the oxys and the um, Percocets and all that stuff. Do you think that putting this in the president's hands is going to make it harder for the people who actually are prescribed these things to get this stuff? I understand not necessarily wanting it out in the streets and definitely not wanting people to overdose on it, not wanting people to abuse it. But for the people who are prescribed these drugs for whatever their ailments are, is it going to make it harder for them to get it? Are they going to get it at all? I mean, one thing that we do know about former President Trump, is that he is big on capitalism, and so therefore he's gonna want big big pharma companies to make their money. How is he going? How is he going to, like? What would be his policy on the drug control? I wonder. Thus, the president must ensure that the ONDCP is managed by political appointees who are committed to the administration's agenda and not acquiescence of management by political or career military personnel who oversaw the prior administration's ONDCP. So once again, he's going to fire all of you guys. He's going to put people in there that are loyalists to him. They're going to do what they say, what he says, to do, and guess you got to join the unemployment line. I don't know. The president should immediately revoke Executive Order 1420 and every policy, including sub-regulatory guidance documents produced on behalf or related to the establishment or promotion of the Gender Policy Council and its subsidiary issues. Everybody losing their job over there. Abolishing abolishing the Gender Policy Council would eliminate central promotion of abortion health services, comprehensive sexuality education, which has a principal tenet: gender affirming care and sex change surgeries on minors. Just one minor that actually went through a full sex change. Just one. I only say one because we hear people, we hear minors say some stuff about, they feel like this way or that way. Whatever, that's fine. Let them do their thing. Yeah, of them actually go through sex change surgeries. I have never once heard of a minor that has gone through sex change surgery. Everyone that I have seen go through that has been an adult. So I'm not understanding why these people are so focused on kids when it comes to sex changes. You're talking about something that goes for adults who not only can come up with the money, because it takes a lot of bread to do those type of surgeries, for one. Two, to find a actual surgeon who is capable of doing it. And then three, you actually have to go through psychological counseling and things before the surgeries can even be put on the table. They have to go through therapy to make sure that this is something that that person actually wants to do, because I'm imagining that it can be irreversible for at least the male to female. It could be irreversible. Another thing is, there's a lot of, they're still identifying as the opposite sex. but a lot of them are not getting sex changes. But if somebody could just name at least one minor, and don't tell me Dwayne Wade's daughter, don't tell me that, because there's no sex change that has taken place with that minor. So don't even put her now. In addition to eliminating the council, developing new structures and positions will have the dual effect of demonstrating that promoting life and strengthening the family is the priority, while also consistency across the U.S. government. I say let them folks spend their money how they want to. Period. If they want to spend their money on that the same way you got racist people want to spend their money on swastikas, let them do it. I don't care. Spend your money on whatever you want. As long as what you're spending your money on doesn't affect me negatively, then I point of contact with the rank of special assistant to the president or higher to coordinate the lead and president's domestic priorities on issues related to life and family in cooperation with the Domestic Policy Council. Well, how can you do that if you're trying to get rid of the whole council? So, do you want to get rid of the council or not? This position would be responsible for facilitating meetings, discussions, and agreements among personnel, coordinating administration policy, and ensuring agency support for implementation of policies related to the promotion of life and family in the United States. It's real simple. People get sex, your family's going to still be the same. You're still going to have people, even if you outlaw it, you're still going to have people who want the sex change, whether they can get it or not. You're still going to have people who don't want the sex change, whether they can get it or not. You're still going to have straight people. You're still going to have heterosexuals. You're still going to have homosexuals. You're still going to have transgender people. They're still going to do it, even if they never go under the knife. They're still going to live their life. And so once people get to the point where we can understand it, to let other people live their life the way that they see fit, as long as it doesn't negatively impact you, we get along a lot better. The vice president is elected on the second highest office in the nation and plays a constitutionally vital role as president in waiting. The vice president also let me see. The president of the Senate and is charged with breaking tie votes in that body. The vice president has been granted office space in the West Wing in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. The OVP is another one of the levers that the president should use to execute his agenda. This is particularly true because of there is significant and unique leverage that the vice president's leadership of the OVP can evoke to shape policy discussions and outcomes. Every other appointed White House official serves as the not at the pleasure of the president, whereas the vice president is elected, and the process for filling vacancies in that Article 2 constitutional office, which includes confirmation of the replacement vice president by a majority of both houses of Congress, is governed by the 25th Amendment. The vice president has his or her own economic advisors, domestic policy and national security staffs, and daily intelligence briefings. The vice president should fill his or her office with strong and sound policy minds to effectively assist the president in fulfilling his agenda, given that the president is a he. The vice president is also a statutory member of the National Security Council. In theory, in light of the fact that the vice president is a member of the member of the Smithsonian Institute's Board of Regents, there's not nothing to prevent Congress from assigning the vice president additional statutory duties. All the components, implementation authority, and a robust OVP should be fully integrated into a policy formation procedures, into all policy formation procedures. Only a vice president who is deeply steeped in the interworking of the interagency and policy councils can offer useful advice and prove helpful in accomplishing the president's agenda.